Welcome to Inside Sim Racing. I'm Darren Ganji with my good buddy Sean Cole. And today we have part one in our tutorial on getting started in iRacing and getting up to your D license. And when we first started in iRacing, or I should say iRacing's been on the market about 4 years now, maybe a little bit more.
Right.
Things were much different. How you progressed, how you got started, and so that's why we're here.
Exactly. I mean, way back when, I actually did a piece that kind of covered this, but at this point, it's so dated, and honestly, we kind of jumped into it with the wrong mindset. So it's probably time to cover that all over again in its current form.
Yeah, and speaking of jumping into the wrong mindset, when we first started, you know, we were veteran sim racers, veteran papyrus drivers. So in other words, we were driving the sim before it was iRacing. NASCAR 2003
and before.
Yeah. So both of us jumped into it going, oh, we got this.
We took it for granted.
We did. And we treated it like a video game to an extent. And iRacing really needs to be treated more like a racing career.
That's well said.
And sure, you could treat it any way you want. It's your account, you paid for it, or however you signed up for it. But it's, you know, if you want to do it the right way, at least the way iRacing intended it to be, it's setting it up like a real racing career. iRacing means internet racing. So,
I got to tell you, if everybody took that mindset, it would be a better service too. Imagine a real race. You're going to buy a car, you're going to take care of it. You're going to read the rule book. You're going to know what your competition is doing. You're going to know everything before you even went out on track.
And a lot of guys take that for granted. So speaking of our first times, we talked about that. My first time was exactly like I had mentioned. I got into the service. It was in the beta days, so it was before it was actually public, open to the public. You couldn't even pay to drive it yet. And I just happened to jump into a room that Dale Earnhardt Jr. was in with his longtime buddy and spotter, TJ Majors. And it was the solstice at Lime Rock, and I'm like, hey man, I'm a road racer. I got this against these guys. And I went in there and made a fool of myself. I think, you know, I don't even know if I practiced that much. And I didn't qualify, so I just was wherever on the grid that, you know, I was placed. And I don't think I made it 3 laps. Made an idiot out of myself.
Right.
And learned really quick that was the wrong approach to iRacing.
Yeah.
You know, what about you?
You know, I don't remember the specifics of on-track moment, but one thing I do remember specifically is that I didn't take it, I don't want to say seriously, I didn't take it like a racing career, and I, like you, just jumped right in. I didn't understand things like safety rating. I didn't understand things like incidents, and I just, you know, I just kind of went in and took it for granted. And I really wish I had taken it more seriously and like a real racing career, because I would have gotten a little more out of it, I'm sure.
Yep.
So in those beginning days, you know, you can't relive that.
Yeah.
You know, it's your name. I can only be Sean Cole, the character on iRacing once.
Right.
You know?
Or you're going to have a number 2 next to your name. We'll get to that. So speaking of getting started, now we told you about how we started in iRacing, which was not the right way. And again, if you can't reset it, you can't create a fake name. Well, I guess you could, but you're really going against the terms of service. But you're using your real name. So I don't want to have a Darren Ganji number 2. And I know you don't want to have a Sean Cole number 2. So we've been treating those like a real racing career, almost to a fault. You know, you've been doing it more. Anyway, we're getting off subject. Okay, so getting started. The first thing you need to decide is, you know, whether or not you want to be a road racer or an oval racer, or both, because you can do both in iRacing, and both careers are separate. So when you purchase your account, it's no secret to people that there's a monthly subscription attached. So you really, and we're going to tell you how to maximize that, your budget, and getting the most out of your subscription versus just buying everything and saying, well, that's expensive. And it's like, well, you don't need to buy everything at the start. So that being said, there's a lot of packages available.
Yeah.
That include the subscription base, which is there's a monthly, or you could buy 3-month packages, 6-month, year, 2-year. And it comes with base content. But there's also packages that include different deals.
I don't know which ones are available right now, but I mean, like, you've had the Radical deal, you have the Cadillac deal, you had the deal we had for our particular race. So
we had a few deals.
Yeah, if you search around, there's always a deal, and like you said, oval or road racer, you'll usually find content a deal that includes content going in the path you're going to choose.
Yep, and we're going to have a thread in our forums that has a link to all the different deals that are currently available. So, and as a matter of fact, for this whole piece, we're going to have a lot of resources available. And to take advantage of that iRacing career and make it more like a real racing career, you really need to take advantage of all the resources available, or you're just not going to get the most of it. You can treat it like a game, sure, but most people out there are trying to treat this like a racing career, and you should too. For this piece, I actually created an alias out there, and because I couldn't start from scratch. Neither of us could start from scratch unless we created a new account. And I took advantage of the Cadillac deal that was available, 3 free months, extra track. So that was more on the road race side. And not to say that you can't transition to Oval with that account or even focus on it, but
and the base membership comes with Oval content, so you can get going.
Yeah, and that one particular just got you some extra tracks for free and free base membership. So I was able to use an alias with iRacing's permission, and the alias is Dario Fangini. way back when, I had an alias on the name Dario Gangini, and I figured Gangini was too close to people. And the main reason too for a totally different alias is because when we go into rooms, a lot of times we're in there and I can't focus on racing. And not that we're big celebrities or anything, but we do get recognized when we go into racing rooms, and I didn't want to be treated any differently.
Right.
So I wanted to be treated just like everybody else and just kind of go in under the radar.
Well, and also rookie progression is a whole, there's a whole path to that, and doing it with any favoritism at all isn't going to help being the same as everybody else is dealing with.
Yeah, and on top of that, in iRacing's current structure, we can't even race in the rookie class. I think in the Miata we can, in the Mazda, but on the Oval side, I think D license is as high as you can race in that fixed setup street stock. Getting ahead of ourselves again, we'll get more to that later. So anyway, you have to use your real name and treat it, with caution and respect. If you want, I mean, it's your name, you can do whatever you want with it, but if you want to get the most out of it, that's the way. Now, moving on, getting the most out of it. Resources. There are so many resources available to learn, tutorials to really get the most out of iRacing, that you really need to use them all, utilize them. They're all right there at your fingertips too. Starting with one that just came out, it's a tutorial video on getting started. And I'd like to thank iRacing for coming out with it, because honestly, I had written a whole piece that covers all this stuff that they talk about in this video. So we're gonna have links, to a lot of this stuff in our description here in this show and at our forum thread at our website. But you got to take advantage of these resources, and for starters, watch that video because it's really important. So if you haven't watched the Getting Started in iRacing video and you haven't started in iRacing yet, you should pause this video and go watch that one because it's really a good one to watch.
And then once you're back to this video, we're going to tell you that once you get back to iRacing, you start things off and it gives you the quick start guide. And I got to tell you, I highly recommend reading this. This is the kind of information you need to know before you go on track with another individual.
And going back to a real racing career, would they allow you on track?
Right.
In SCCA, I mean, even Chump Car, we're going to race this Chump Car race here, and you're going to need to know the rules.
Even a simple track day.
Yep. You need to know that they're going to have a meeting, a driver's meeting.
Yeah.
So consider that your driver's meeting to an extent.
And that's why it's there.
Yep.
So read it, understand it, and have the respect and courtesy of other drivers to have understood the information in it.
Yep. So once getting started through the software download and setup portion of the quick guide, you get to section 5, the iRacing website. This is not that all the sections aren't important, but this one is very important as it tells you where everything is, just like that video did. But again, utilize all these resources. Don't gloss over it. Don't take it for granted. If you want to go out and test, and again, it's your career, do whatever you want with it, but if you want to feel what it's like to drive the car and you haven't yet, go out and test. You can even go to a practice session, but I don't even recommend doing that because there's other people out there. And I go out to a practice session to start honing my skills at that track, not dodge rolling chicanes. So, be patient. You're spending good money on this. Get the most out of it.
Yeah.
Don't rush it.
Some other key sections of the website are the reference tab. And in there, you're going to find some very good information that you got to read. I mean, it's important stuff like the user guide, sporting code, driving school videos, as well as a series of how-to videos. Something that's not stressed enough is reading that sporting code. I mean, it's just like anything else. Have the respect and courtesy to your other drivers to understand this form of competition.
There's a sanctioning body or sanctioning rules, and that sporting code is that rule book.
Yes.
And you should read it. And it's not stressed enough in the quick guide, in my opinion, or even at all, or in that getting started video.
Yeah.
And again, stop this video right now and maybe come back, but read the sporting code. It is essential.
It should be like the mandatory thing like on the PlayStation where you have to at least scroll to the bottom and hit I agree, so at least we know you at least had the option to read it all, because it's that important.
And all the videos too. I think almost people should be forced to watch those videos to be part of it. I mean, again, it's the driver's meeting. Another very important section or resource section is documents and tools, and in it has the quick start guide as well as setup tools and some other great reading to get you started. And make sure to read the beginner's guide that's located in there as well to expand upon the tutorial that we're showing you here. The more knowledge, the better before you get on track against other people. Again, go ahead and test if you want, but don't go out with other people until you're ready. That's the bottom line.
Another purpose of this video is really to kind of help you out navigating the iRacing site. There's so much going on that you could miss it if you didn't pay attention to this video or really look detailed.
Or they may not have been included in the other the references that we've given you. So we're just trying to, again, add to that.
Exactly. And one of those is the stats tab. And in there you can get in-depth stats on your own personal record on iRacing. You can also look at competition licenses as well as the ability to view other members' career stats. It's a great place to check out how you're progressing or the standings for official series that you're running in. So, I mean, ultimately, anything you've done official on iRacing is being recorded, and you could go back and look at how you did, whether it was scoring points or your safety rating or anything else.
Testing sessions don't show up there, but any other iRacing sessions that you're in are there. And then there's another section for hosted stats that's separate to that, and hosted racing is separate from the iRacing structure. We'll talk about that later. Another really important section is the forum. And if you're not familiar with the forum and you're new to PC, the PC world, in general, forum is basically a meeting place where there's topics and people can reply to those topics. And iRacing's forum is a huge resource for setting up your hardware, setting up the game or the software, the sim, advice on what hardware to buy, current events that are coming up, topics off topic that are talking about the president that was just elected or whatever. I mean, you're not supposed to talk about that stuff. No politics or religion. But anyway, it's a great resource, and get in there. As long as you're logged into iRacing, you're logged into the forum. Take advantage of it. There's a section for your region. So Sean and I just moved up to the Pacific Northwest. We're in the Pacific Northwest or the Northwest region now. We used to be in the California region. And so there's a section just for locals. We met up with a lot of locals, so you can meet up with local iRacers, that are into the same thing you are.
Now, assuming you've watched the Getting Started video, you've looked through all the reference material, and you're really ready to pursue your iRacing career, a lot of people bring up the topic of money. I mean, it is a subscription-based sim. You do have to pay for your content, and that means for some people, finances becomes an issue, I'd even say.
Yep.
So what would you do as far as beginning, but if you were like in a financial pinch?
Well, that's a great question, and we're going to hopefully tell you some ways to race on a budget. First of all, take advantage of one of the offers that we told you about at the top of the show. You got to take advantage of one of those because there's some great deals out there. 6-month year packages with IndyCar, everything. I mean, any type of racing that you can think about, there's probably a package for you. Just like in real racing, you got a budget to work with. And in iRacing, you've got your budget that's in your pocket to work with. So, I mean, if you've if you're loaded, buy everything because it's all worth it. But, you know, if you're on a budget, you got to figure out what path you're going to go down. Here's some tips or deals actually after you get racing on, you know, how you can get a cheaper membership and race for money or race for credits.
Now, like you said, you can actually earn credits while racing. And to do that, basically it breaks down to 4 different seasons per year, and you can earn up to $10 per season. So as long as you're running at least 8 of the 12 races of that season in that series and scoring points in 8 of 12 races, you'll be eligible to get that $10 credit per season. So multiply that by 4, and that's actually $40 back on what you paid to be there for the year.
Yep. Sessions in Pro, the Premier Series, and the Rookie Series do not count. So you have to, and it's back to the racing career. You have to focus on one series and run 8 of the 12 races in that series, which is kind of cool because then you're competing for a championship in your division.
Right.
And the credit payout is based on the license level, and the max is $7. So to earn the full 10, you need to actually run in 2 official series.
We also have to talk about volume discounts. So planning your career is going to be strategic here. So when I say volume discounts, buying any 3 pieces of content at once gets you a 10% discount on that content. Buying any 6 pieces of content at once gets you 20% off. And if you are just going to say, what the heck, I need everything, you get 25% if you're going to buy all the content. But again, when you're starting out, you don't need all the content.
Nope.
You're on a path, and you need to look at the schedule and buy. Let's for say example, I'm going to buy the truck, buy the tracks that I need, buy 6 at once, the truck and 5 tracks, and I'm going to get that 20% discount.
Yeah, and something else to take into account here, you don't need to buy any content to get started. As a rookie, your content is all supplied to you. You get, I don't know, there's 7 cars, 12, 13 tracks, there's a bunch of content. And again, as a member, or signing up as a member or looking into it, you should already know that. But you get all the content to get to your D license. Then it's like what Sean said, you really want to start plotting that career and figuring out what you want to buy. Because you don't want to buy a bunch of stuff you don't need. So you need to look at the schedule and see what's coming up on the schedule and so on. And iRacing makes it easy too, where you can just, and in one of those videos I think it talks about that, you click a series and you can buy all the content for that series that you need. Besides that, they also have a referral bonus where you can get $10 per referral, $10 in credit. And there's also an anniversary bonus. So if you're a member for a full year, you get a $10 credit for being a member for a continual year. And then there's also membership deals. Bottom line is, I think it's like, if you take advantage of all the anniversary credits and all the participation credits, every Black Friday, which is right around Thanksgiving here in the States, they have, like for a week, $49 to re-up your membership. And then I think they do one about mid-year too. So if you take advantage of that deal and do all your race participation, basically an iRacing membership, an annual membership, is $4. So you really can't complain about that annual membership fee if you're racing.
Right.
$4, it turns out to be like 33 cents a month.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's pretty cheap.
Well, and having the path keeps it cheap even going down the path, because instead of just buying all the content, you can kind of keep it on that path.
Yep. So that's going to wrap up the first half of this tutorial. When we come back, we got lots more, starting with your hardware getting set up and getting to that D-license path when we come back. GT Chassis Racing Rigs provided by Human Racing. Go to humanracing.co.th.
The T500 RS wheel and pedal set from Thrustmaster, officially licensed by Sony in Gran Turismo 5 and designed for the most die-hard racing fans. It has unmatched power and precision, it's backlash-free, and totally responsive. With this wheel and pedal set, users will go farther than ever before in their racing experience. To find out where to purchase the T500 RS, visit www.thrustmaster.com.
Welcome back to our tutorial on getting started in iRacing. Sean Cole here with Darren Ganji. And first up, we're going to talk about your hardware setup. And most important thing, I think, one of the most important things is your internet connection. And they kind of gloss over it in the getting started. They tell you where to go check it out, and it's in the ping section, or there's a little ping, a thing called ping.
Right.
If you're not familiar with what ping is basically the time it takes to go from your house or wherever you're racing to the server and back. So like in the old Navy days, they
sonar,
they'd ping things to see how far they were out using sound waves. Am I right? Is that how I think?
That type, yeah. I'm not.
Correct us if you guys will if I'm wrong, but
I think in theory it's exactly the same thing essentially. It's how many milliseconds it takes for that information to travel.
That loop. Now, in the tutorial the getting started tutorial that iRacing did, they said, if you're not having problems, don't worry about it. Well, you should make sure you're not having problems before getting into that. And if you're seeing any loss percentage or bad quality numbers up in that ping section, you should look into an internet connection or how you're connected.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of how you're connected, it might start in your own room. I mean, you can run on a wireless internet connection. I mean, if you had your computer in the same room, you definitely could, but I wouldn't advise it. I mean,
and we're talking same room as where that wireless connection is coming from. If you're,
I
don't recommend wireless. If that's the case, run a wire because you're that close anyway.
And almost all routers have the plug-in, so hard wire to it. But out on track against others, I wouldn't want to be on any kind of wireless connection because maybe it looks okay from your screen, but maybe the way everybody else sees you is jumping all over the place because you have a bad ping.
So if you're in a room, you're getting started and you see somebody blinking in and out, or you see if you see all the cars blinking in and out, that's your problem.
Yeah.
You have a bad connection. If you see one car blinking in and out, that's his problem. And you can see people's connection when you're connected to the server. It shows their quality and stuff. So, and you can also check it while you're on track. There's a little bar. It's very important because that's your lifeline to the track.
Yeah.
You disconnect or you have problems connecting, or you could adversely affect the outcome of a race. You could be disconnecting from the race and adversely affect your results. And that just affects everything. So make sure you got a good connection.
Yeah, and at this point, I mean, Darren and I only race on wire connection. I wouldn't even think about going out in public on a wireless at all.
Maybe on the PS3 or the console, but not on iRacing. No way.
So now that we are kind of starting to talk about being on track, I think let's talk about field of view, which is a very important aspect regardless of one screen or three.
Yep. The reason why field of view is so important is because of how your position or your head position, whatever, directly relates to the position inside the car on the screen. And how far away you are directly relates to how you perceive how that car is handling. And if the bottom line is, you want to treat that like a windshield almost. And we're going to show you some shots here of how close Sean's monitors are. I mean, his monitors are over the top of his wheel. That's how close he's got them. So you really want to make it like a windscreen.
Now the field of view part of it might actually affect your timing, but the other part of it is you can actually adjust up and down, and maybe that's more comfort, because I don't know if it
Well, hold on, I'm talking about physical field of view.
Right.
You have your physical field of view, so your distance from your eyes to your monitor, and then you can also adjust that field of view in game.
Right.
So that's what Sean was just referring to. You can adjust forward and back and up and down in game to get it.
Yeah. And so again, regardless whether it's one or three screens, you get it to that point where you feel like you're in the cockpit.
Yep. And you don't have to have three screens to get that feeling. We do recommend, if you don't have three, the bigger the better. So you can run on your home LCD if you plug your PC into it.
Yeah.
And we recommend doing that.
But the principles are the same. You're still going to adjust it. So regardless of where that monitor is, getting the field of view and the height and everything to match so you feel like you're in the car.
And not sitting in the back seat of the car.
Right.
So you're sitting at the wheel looking out the windshield. If you think about it too, go sit in your real car. And are you looking at your wheel? No. You're looking out the windshield. And you're not even looking at the interior of your car at that point.
Absolutely. So speaking of wheel, and this is another thing, I mean, it comes down to a few things on the wheel. Number one, the settings of the wheel, making sure everything is working both in the Windows software, also calibrated correctly in the game.
This is not a plug and play experience. So it's not like if you're coming from the console, you plug it in and you go. The PC is not like that. Yes, you plug it in, it's going to recognize it, but if you don't have the driver from that particular manufacturer, so we're running Thrustmaster equipment, there is a driver that goes with that wheel. And what a driver is, if you're not familiar with that, I mean, we're getting to the real basics here. A driver is a piece of software that's basically telling the PC how to communicate with that wheel and vice versa. And the game, telling the game how to communicate with that wheel and vice versa. So, having all the proper drivers and all that set up is number one. Setting it up within the software in Windows is number two. And then setting it up properly within the game is number three. And all of those are really key to getting that right feel. If you just plug and play and wondering why this doesn't feel right, it's because you probably haven't set things up right.
Absolutely, and the ratios are all out of whack, and maybe even the center point is out of whack.
And we could go in depth for a half an hour on wheel setup, but we really don't have time in this show. Come into our forums and ask. Go into the iRacing forums and ask. If you're struggling with that feel, bottom line is, if you're kind of familiar with it, you want to set up your degrees of rotation, and that's how far the wheel goes, to its max inside the software, and let iRacing do its thing. Calibrate it, read the calibration screens, and properly calibrate your equipment. Otherwise, things aren't going to be right.
I'd also make the argument that a wheel is not properly set up until it's hard mounted.
Yep.
Certainly clamped down really well, but even when I was on a desktop, if you really went to my desk, you'd see there are 2 holes drilled where I could hard mount through the desk.
Yes.
So
yeah, that is definitely key. You don't need a rig like this to sim race. You could be at a desk. That's where we both started. You could be at a wheel stand. Again, as long as you're close enough to that monitor and you've got to set up, whatever you're using, make sure you get that monitor close enough. That is the key. And speaking of video, another key to setting up, not a plug and play experience there. There's so many different variables, whether you have an NVIDIA card, an ATI card, and I think you can even run with iRacing, Intel onboard graphics, which we don't recommend, but you can do it. I think you could even, I don't know how a Mac, you can race on a Mac too,
right.
But getting your video set up properly for proper frames per second, or FPS is what we'll refer to it as. You know, that's going to vary per PC, per graphics card, and so on. So getting all that dialed in and set up right is essential to your racing experience.
And it usually starts with the right drivers. So if you've got a card, making sure you have the drivers that are, same thing, communication device. You know, it's communicating graphically speaking.
Yep. And there's another thing that has to do with your wheel and your graphics and how that all relates. And there's something called input lag. And if you don't have things set up properly and you're not getting at least 60 frames per second locked, if you're dipping below 60 frames per second, you're really struggling. I don't like to run below 120 frames per second because to me, I feel like everything's happening real time. And I'm having no hiccups, no lag. My input is making the car do what I'm thinking it's supposed to do.
Well, and there's no denying that there are times that are a little more taxing on the system. So if you're consistently running 120, you're going to see a dip from time to time, and it's having that cushion. But frame rates are very important, and when you're really dialing things in, turning off the eye candy and getting it to the point where you're playing in excess of 60 frames, upward at 120, is very important. It's going to change the driving experience. Maybe it won't look as pretty, but the driving experience is so much better.
That is the key too, especially when you start adding more cars, you get online and you're racing 40 plus cars, it's going to tax your system and it's going to adversely affect your driving if you're not able to maintain those frames per second. So this is not a plug and play experience as much as iRacing is very user-friendly when it comes to being a PC sim. PC sim racing in general is not a plug-and-play experience, especially if you are not well-versed in operating a PC. So next thing, keyboard and mouse, and keyboard mainly, and how closely related it is to where you're driving. In iRacing, there are, 25, 30 different functions you can map to that keyboard, and you can map your keyboard any way you want. You can even map buttons on your wheel to take care of these functions, and we highly recommend it. But again, it's back to that taking your time to get set up. See what you can map. Label the stuff if you can. I mean, if you can afford it and you've set it up, get a button box. You know, we talk about button boxes here on the show, but Button placement, keyboard placement is essential. There's the F1 screen, which tells you your lap times and stuff.
Right.
There's your F2 screen, which is your standings in iRacing. F3 is relative.
Right.
That tells you where you are in relation to other drivers on the track. And having quick access to those is essential.
Well, and the other thing I'd recommend for those who have a dedicated rig, meaning the keyboard's also somewhat dedicated, label your keyboard. So even if you don't have a button box, put some tape over the tabs or whatever as reminders. There's simple things so you can see out of the corner of your eye when you're reaching out for the F3 button and say, oh yeah, blue is my standings page, or relative, sorry.
Good tip.
The next thing you have to set up correctly, in the case of iRacing, it's a little more elaborate than other sims, but you've got your whole sound section to deal with, and you've got to pick the right sound card for your primary sound. You also can have secondary sound for your chat and your spotter and the communications in game. So if you are using multiple devices, which both of us do, I actually split those sound devices. But whether you're using headphones, whether you're using a 5-in-1 surround system, you basically can get everything dialed in pretty well for your system.
And it's another essential part of sim racing. It's because you're relying on those sound cues to tell you what the car's doing in a lot of cases, where you're not feeling it. We refer to it as seat of the pants. You're not feeling it in your seat. You're not feeling the car move under you. So you have to take visual cues and audio cues to help get the full experience, and having a good sound system is key to that.
Yeah, and if I can't play a good sound system loud, then I'm going to go with headphones so that I can hear all the depth of the game, because it helps. Well, that kind of gives you a taste of all the things you're going to have to deal with in setting up iRacing and really getting to that point you're ready to get out on track. I mean, and we've covered all of these things, but if you're looking for more, our website has an entire iRacing section. So there are already people who maybe have experienced these first steps and are talking about it, or maybe people who have your same hardware or dealing with anything that you're trying to learn more about before you move on.
You know, and back to where we started, you know, if you started a real racing career, would you just go out on the track to qualify or race without practicing, if you could, learning the track, going to a driver's meeting? I mean, they're not going to let you do any. You're going to have to be licensed to go out on that track, and that's what iRacing is all about. And again, to get the most out of your iRacing experience, you have to treat it like a real racing career. So we could go on forever. Make sure you take advantage of some of those resources, at both our site and the iRacing forums. Set up on your force feedback, your wheel, video cards, all that stuff is in the forums, and there's great resources available both at our site and theirs. So make sure you get the most of that. That's going to wrap up part 1.
So I can hit the green button now?
If you want, you can. You can. You can too if you're ready to go. We've pretty much got you set up ready to go. Now we're going to really tell you what it's like to get out on track, focus on your I rating, your safety rating, that kind of stuff, how to get to a D license, what it's like driving on the roadside and on the oval side in those rookie races. So like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, visit us at our website, isrtv.com. Hope you've enjoyed part 1 of this tutorial. Anything else, Sean, before we go?
No, pretty thorough.
All right, for Sean Cole, I'm Darren Ganji. We'll see you on part 2.